Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I am back, and as we all know, the NFL playoffs start this Saturday with a bunch of very good games upcoming. We have super fun matchups like the Green Bay Packers versus Dallas, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Miami Dolphins, and of course, the Lions versus the Rams. But we are not here to talk about individual matchups, we are here to talk about the 4 teams with the most pressure on them to succeed in this year's playoffs. So without me yapping this whole time, let's just hop right into it. Now, before I get into my list, I completely understand that every single team has pressure to perform within the playoffs. But me personally, I feel like these 4 teams I'm going to mention just have a little bit more pressure just due to their track record and their recent success. So as an example of what I'm talking about, a team like the Kansas City Chiefs or the Detroit Lions don't have as much pressure on them as some of the teams in my list. Because for Kansas City, the goal this year was to repeat as champions, but if you don't, well, you still won the championship last year. And for a team like Detroit, you've already reached your goal for this season. The goal was to win the division, and anything else on top of it is just a cherry on top. Plus, they're a super young team that doesn't really have to worry about their future because they already have the future assets there. So of course they have pressure to perform in the playoffs, but just not as much as these other teams. And the first team we're going to talk about is the Buffalo Bills. Now, ever since Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs, this has obviously been one of the best teams in the entire NFL. They have won many games and have had some success within the playoffs, but not the type of success that you want to have for a franchise. This team has had Super Bowl aspirations and has yet to even make an AFC championship game. And this is all despite the fact that they have the roster and the quarterback that is good enough to make it that far. And while I understand this team is overperforming given their current roster and due to some of their injuries, there is pressure on them this year given the fact that AFC is fairly weak to at least make it to the AFC championship game. Of course, the Super Bowl is the goal, but at the bare minimum, the pressure for them to at least make the AFC championship game is immense. Because if they don't make it that far, who knows how far this team can actually go. If there was ever a time for this team to find the success that they need to have, it would be this year. The Chiefs have their problems, the Dolphins have their problems, the Browns have Joe Flacco as their quarterback, and of course Lamar Jackson is the best team, but you don't have to face them at minimum to the AFC championship game. And given the fact they are the number 2 seed right now, they're going to have favorable matchups moving forward. So if this is not their year, then I just don't know which year is going to be their year because these other AFC teams are only going to continue to get better. And truth be told, while those other AFC teams are obviously going to get better, I don't really know how Buffalo can get significantly better. They don't really have the cap space, they really don't have the draft capital, and sure, they can make a couple moves to make this team better, but in terms of how much better they're going to be able to get in comparison to other teams, I just don't know. You look at a team like the Texans or the Jaguars or the Colts, or hell, the entire AFC South, they're all going to get better. Not to mention the Bengals will get healthy and the Chiefs will figure out their receiving core. So the AFC is open for this team to make the run that they finally need to make. And again, I don't think the pressure is for them to go out there and win a championship. I think it's just for them to make the AFC championship game. But they have a lot of pressure on them, but the next team in my opinion has even more pressure on them, and at number 3, I have their potential playoff opponents, the Baltimore Ravens. And a lot of the reasons why I have the Bills at 4 is kind of similar reasons as to why I have Baltimore at 3. Except the major difference between these 2 teams is that Baltimore is healthy and this is the best team they're going to have in quite some time. Lamar is playing like an MVP, you have a top 3 defense, your head coach is there, everything is there for you to win. And this is a team similar to Buffalo that has not had the success in the playoffs that they probably would like to have. And that is of course not just because of Lamar Jackson, but the team in total has kind of struggled in the playoffs multiple times. But this is the year, you have a first round bye, you're going to be favored in every single game you go up against this year. You've consistently shown throughout the regular season that you are the superior team against very good teams like San Francisco and Miami, but now you have to show it in the playoffs. So from here on out, the pressure for you is immense. In every single game, it is your game to lose, and if they lose, it is going to be a madhouse in Baltimore. Now that's not me saying that Baltimore is going to lose. At the end of the day, I think Baltimore has the most complete team within the AFC. But that goes back to my main point. The pressure is all on them. If they fail to make the run they are expecting to make, it is going to be crazy. And yet again, similar to Buffalo, it's not like this team has the cap space or the draft capital or all the things you want to have to get better. Sure, you can go out there and draft a receiver, maybe get a defensive tackle and fill in some problems you may have, but it's likely going to cost you more than you probably have. But all of those concerns and worries would completely go away with a win in the playoffs. And unlike Buffalo, I don't think the AFC Championship game is enough. I think this team almost has to make it to the Super Bowl. And that goes back to why I have the Buffalo Bills at 4 and the Baltimore Ravens at 3. I think Buffalo doesn't have to make a Super Bowl run, whereas I think Baltimore basically has to. This is Baltimore's year to lose it, and if they lose it, oh my goodness, I don't know what they're going to do moving forward. But this team has a ton of pressure on them, but I don't think it's as much as this next team, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. When you have the Avengers on your team, and yes, I said the Avengers, and I'm going to say that every single time I see this team, you have to win. I don't care if you're going up against some really good teams like Dallas, the Rams, the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl potentially, you have got to win it all. Because guys like Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, and some of your other guys are getting older, and your team eventually is going to have to get paid. And while more than likely this team is going to be constructed very similarly next year, I almost feel like it is a must-win season for them because they are fully healthy and they're playing phenomenal football. And in an NFC playoff run where there's not a whole lot of great teams, this has got to be their year within the playoffs. And I feel like nobody talks about this, but the San Francisco 49ers have been extremely unlucky in the playoffs and just have not performed up to expectation. It feels like ever since their Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs a few years ago, it has been the expectation that this team should make the Super Bowl. But year after year, and injury after injury, they have failed to make it to that spot again. And with Dallas and the LA Rams being your two major concerns in the playoffs, in which you have shown the ability to beat those teams, you have to be able to do it in the playoffs yet again. And while I fully expect them to be able to do that, it's one thing from the expectations to actually putting it out there on the field. Because the Niners were able to blow out the Cowboys and beat the LA Rams pretty convincingly with all their starters, can they do it again in the playoffs? Again, I fully expect them to be able to do that, but this is the best team you're going to have and the healthiest team you're going to have in quite some time. Not to mention, you're the number 1 seed and are going to have a bye and going to have more time to prepare for your next matchup. So if you get upset by a team like Dallas or Los Angeles, it is going to be bad for San Francisco. And sure, they can go back next year and be really good again, but then we're going to be saying the exact same thing we're saying right now. So in the NFC, they have a ton of pressure to find ways to win and succeed. But they are not my number 1 team, and I think everyone's going to understand why, because my number 1 team is the Dallas Cowboys. And say what you want about this Dallas Cowboys team, but they are legitimately the only team that, in my opinion, stands a chance against the San Francisco 49ers. And for Dallas's sake, you cannot lose to San Francisco 3 years in a row. And that's not even including the regular season blowout that just happened this year. And if we do assume these two teams make it to the NFC Championship game, which by all means seems like it's going to happen at this point, Dallas will have to find a way to beat the team that has consistently been better than them. Now, I understand the talent in San Francisco is probably better than the talent in Dallas, but Dallas has just as much talent as that San Francisco team. Now, the one thing I will say about Dallas is this: I don't think Dallas necessarily has to go out there and win a Super Bowl, even though I think that is obviously the goal, but I think the main goal is just beating San Francisco at some point in the playoffs. I think if they can beat those demons, then I don't know, good things are coming in Dallas. That has been the backpack that has been on their shoulders for every single year that they have lost to the San Francisco 49ers, and until they can get that load off their back, it's going to consistently be a problem. Furthermore, for the Dallas Cowboys, the pressure is on them to win it this year because, as I've mentioned for a couple teams now, the NFC is pretty weak. Yes, you have San Francisco, but they are legitimately the only team that I think has a chance against Dallas. Because sure, Green Bay is going to be a fun game against Dallas, but I do think Dallas can handle business. And we've already seen Dallas beat up on the LA Rams just a few weeks ago. And yes, I understand that the LA Rams were injured and had some problems of their own in that time, but Dallas beat them pretty convincingly and it really was not that close. And then the rest of the NFC is the Detroit Lions, which Dallas beat them, the Philadelphia Eagles, which Dallas beat them, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which Dallas would beat them. So in my opinion, I feel like all the pressure in the world is going to be on Dallas if they make it to the first round or second round or third round or hell, even the Super Bowl. And with Dak Prescott playing the way he is, the pressure is amplified even more, because if he goes out there and has a blunder in the playoffs, everyone is going to forget this great year he has had. And we will continue to say that Dallas is choke artist in the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure Dallas Cowboys fans are sick and tired of hearing that stupid narrative. And all things considered, I do think Dallas has been pretty good in the playoffs, but against the San Francisco 49ers, it has not been the case. So if Dallas can put together the game plan and beat the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs, that would be super impressive. And I think anything else on top of that is just a cherry on top. So in my opinion, I feel like Dallas has the most pressure on them. I also think San Francisco, Baltimore, and Buffalo have pressure on them as well. If I had to include a couple honorable mentions, I would say that the LA Rams have a little bit of pressure on them, but I don't really feel like they have that much pressure because they're a pretty old team who's already won a Super Bowl. Pittsburgh doesn't really have any pressure on them because nobody thought they'd be here. You could say Cleveland has pressure on them, but I don't think they have as much pressure as these other teams because, well, you have Joe Flacco as your starting quarterback, so the simple fact that you made it this far, in my opinion, is pretty impressive. And then, of course, Green Bay and Tampa Bay are just happy to be there. Same thing with Houston, which, by the way, if Houston can make that run, that would be ridiculous. I have a video planned to come out sometime this week regarding who is going to win the playoffs. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because that would help me out a ton. We are nearing 1,000 subscribers, and when you guys are watching this, we might actually be at 1,000 subscribers. So if we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. So if you are not subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button and let me know in the comment section below which team you guys think have the most pressure in the playoffs this year. And if you enjoyed, make sure to hit the like button. But I love you guys. Peace.